Yahoo! Prof here, and we got a big old pile of new stuff there with a new project. You're like, new project? What? Somebody told me about EC switches. You're like, EC switches? Well, basically you can build yourself a happy hacking keyboard, so obviously I have to. But that is not what this video is about. This video is our first part of our networking upgrade, our first step towards getting a proper network rack, and then eventually server rack. So I may have made a video on the server I typed from work with permission, mostly. The only reason why I did that is because at the time, Ubiquiti didn't have a router, like a Dream Machine, that would switch 5 gig. And I have it only did 3.5 gig. I have a 5 gig connection. And you're like, no, you don't. You can't actually even do the full 5 gig. Nothing can do the full 5 gig. Where are we at? That ain't it, I don't think. No. That's my poor SSD. There you go. 590 peak download. Disk usage 561. And then here, look at that poor thing, 100%. That's an old, there you go, M500, Crucial M500. Even Crucial's like, we make newer SSDs, right? Well, until she dies, we're going to be using her, boys and gals. Now you want to see dead. Here is the Evo drive that I'm running as one of my cache drives for a VM. That's not good. Both drives in the VDEV mirror are throwing errors. And that might be why. Yeah. Health remaining 9%. Also, 471 terabytes, right? What is, maybe you guys know off the top of your head, what is an 860 Evo 500 gig rated at? 300 terabyte rates. Yeah, so that is not surprising. It's not surprising. Or at least should not be surprising. Let me check screenshot, maybe? Okay, I don't know where the fuck it went. That's old stuff. Sorting by. Okay, yeah, demodified, correct. No idea where it went. Let's check Square's chat. Jesus. I didn't realize I went that far back. Here you go. Once it loads up, we're zooming. Yeah, that's why you put it. That's actually why you need an NVMe. Besides direct storage, which there are a few games that actually use it. You saw the poor. Yes, and SATA drives can be a little bit faster because that's a. We don't call it like a. There's another generation past that M500 of SATA 3, 6 gigabit SATA SSDs, right? But this one's running a 990 Pro 2 terabyte. Downloading 3D Mark wasn't doing it. It was Tony Hawk, right? You get the blip for the 3D Mark, bloop, bloop. And you got Tony Hawk, bam, swoop, right? So yes, this is why I need to actually be able to route 5 gigabit, as there are things out there, legal things, that can do. I mean, I think I've only, even with speed test, with the closest 10 gig speed test server, hit 4.8 gigs. Above 3.5, you do start, like, you can't actually use the web-based speed test. You have to use CLI-based. Otherwise, there's too much overhead from the web browser that you can't actually exceed. Like, you might get over 3 gigabit for results, but it's going to be inconsistent. So you actually have to run a CLI. So, yes, after redoing all my network, and no, you guys do not need 5 gigabit. I would argue for me, 2 gigabit would have been enough. Because you want more than a gig, because even Wi-Fi 7 now can do more than a gig. Wi-Fi 7 has to be done over 2.5 gig Ethernet, right? Most desktops are coming with 2.5 gig Ethernet. The other thing for me is I personally had a dedicated server online I was renting, which had gigabit and had for like a decade. But then at home I had gig Spectrum, right? Gig in big quotes. So, like, basically, in order to do what I was doing and not have to rent that server anymore and just use my own with my home internet, I needed 2 gig. I believe at the time they were going to force me to use, this was like before TDS had rolled out their internet connection, they were going to force me to use their hardware. But at 5 gig, they only provide the, I forget what it's called, like the gateway, which converts the, like, their fiber to the home to, like, whatever you need. Originally, I thought it was a good thing I waited until they actually shipped it. They originally said I needed SFP fiber. Like, that's what my router had to have 5 gig. By the time they rolled it out to me, they had updated what they were selling, and it's got multiple 2.5 gig links out, like 4 of them. It's not a router though, so I don't know how that works. And it has a single 10 gig Ethernet port. Much easier for me to deal with since all of my stuff is 10 gig Ethernet. And the newer 10 gig Ethernet, like the one that can switch, I didn't, like, because 10 gig Ethernet existed before even I got into it. When I got into it was when the Aquantia chipsets came out, because that was the first time 10 gig chipsets dropped to like around $100. They were like 100, more like maybe 120 for the longest time. Now you can even run about 80. You don't want those though. Buy a used Intel X550 and update the firmware. Without the firmware update, it is incompatible with, like, it can't do the 2.5 gig, 5 gig, 10 gig switching between those speeds. Older 10 gig was 1 gig, 10 gig. It didn't do, like, so it's actually like a different protocol. You also have to make sure that your switch is a newer one. Not that, okay, I shouldn't say not that older stuff. If you are going to the older 10 gig Ethernet, get all old shit. Just be aware, you're not going to be able to take your Wi-Fi 7 access point and ka-chunk it in there. My recommendation is, because modern stuff, I mean, I've had my current 10 gig switch, which was one of the first budget ones. I mean, budget as in it's $500. That's budget for 10 gig switches back in the day. This one is an 8-port managed. Right over there, it's TP-Link. One that Linus was pushing for a while. Not like pushing in a bad way, but like one that they found that they worked decently for them before they went to more enterprise, higher end, like rather than prosumer small business, they went to enterprise equipment with a Dell switch. Was a 12-port non-managed, but only 8 of those were 10 gig Ethernet. The other 4 were SFP plus. Now that could actually be useful if you have SFP plus hardware. At least I think it was, or it might have been actually 12 10 gig Ethernet, with 4 of those being able to be either 10 gig Ethernet or SFP plus. It was something like that, and that was right around that same, like, They were kind of in the range of $450 to $550. That was considered a good price. Now you can get a Ubiquiti with 16 10 gig Ethernet and 8 2.5 gig Ethernet for $1,000. Whereas prior to those 10 gig switches, the 8 port or maybe a 16 port would have been $2,000 to $3,000 minimum. So, and I've already had that switch. If any of you are interested in it, let me know. Reason being is once I do get my Ubiquiti set up, I do probably plan on I'd love to get this Boom Boom satellites back. To be truthful, they're actually like made to order and stuff. However, I can't ship things from overseas anymore, at least until I get the shit figured out, because de minimis tax the de minimis exemption has been gotten rid of. So we used to be able to get anything under $800 without tax or tariff to come in the U.S. You know, like no customs / duties, basically. And not anymore. And because there's nothing in place to capture that money we now need to pay as U.S. citizens, or anybody in the U.S. getting anything shipped in the U.S. personally, the foreign companies just aren't. I mean, even DHL has stopped shipping to the U.S. internationally, which during COVID, they were the only ones that would do it. Holy shit. 2011? No, that's too long ago. 2016, 10. I've had this 10 gig switch 10 years? What? I don't even think that's possible. This can't be right. I have to look at my documentation, which switch that is. Yeah, I mean, now you can, here you go, you can get a 24 port. Oh, it's gigabit, not 10 gig. Let's see if OneNote can solve our problems. Since I would have hopefully documented the login. Setup. Nope. Systems. No. I think it would be set up, but no. Really, I don't have that login documented someplace. I find that highly unlikely. What the hell? Search notebooks. TP link. Yeah, no idea. Sadly, it's been a hot minute though. It has been a hot. Oh, that's not even the switch. Is that why? Am I horrible at this? Did I look at the wrong one? I shouldn't have. I know, the video is about a completely different thing. That's how my brain works, especially when it gets to be that time. Okay, so Yeah, it's because it's not a TP-Link. It's a TrendNet. Teehee. TG8 7080 ES. Yeah, it was like TP-Link didn't sound right. I think I bought a bunch of TrendNets. They're I don't know if I'd recommend them. If you just need a switch, it's fine. I've got some out at the farm that I do stuff at too. We've actually never had any go out, or anything, but I wouldn't say they're like nice to manage or anything. So 2019, 7 years. There's math. Wow, 6 years. Yeah, the beginning of September. So invoice. Yeah, there you go. So, and that's not even the start to my 10 gig, because that's what I was doing. Prior to that, I was just running from the server at the time, which may or may not have been a dedicated one, or could have just been the home theater PC acting as a server. I don't seem to remember, based on timeline. And even then, I actually even ended up doing a second one, because prior to that switch, and I forget the name of the other brand that had that other one I was talking about that Linus had gone over. Prior to that, it was actually cheaper for me to buy a second set of, and they're right up here. So if you guys need a Quantia chipset, 10 gig NIC card, let me know. I got these Asus ROG ones, which I have actually flashed. For the longest time, they were not compatible with Windows 11, even or iffy compatible with they wouldn't actually even work in Windows 11, because Asus, you can't see the chip directly with the Aquantia. They show up as like an Asus network card, not the Aquantia chipset. So the firmware and driver, the driver thinks it isn't a legit, because you can't force anymore the not exact matching driver onto a device anymore in Windows 11. At least you might be able to, but it's not very easy anymore. There isn't just the check the box, I have the driver, use this one anyway. It's been removed effectively. But it's all about, also, these kind of had both of these and these red ones, which are the original standalone. Originally, these came on a X99 top-end Asus board, I believe it was. Kind of like these came on a top-end X79 Asus board, and that was like, both of those were the only way to get these for the longest time. These are like the X100Cs. If there are ways to work around, and I believe I've documented it, to get that firmware on there from this guy, which is a QNAP one, which just uses the generic Marvell or Quantia firmware on there. So there are ways that you can force this firmware. Well, actually, not even this firmware. This just uses the generic chip the way it should onto these Asus branded ones. And then, because that firmware just makes it the generic chip, after you like kind of peel back the Asus layer, you can put the driver, just generic driver from Marvell, onto all of those. So if you guys need any of those, let me know. I've switched to the Intel X550s. But it was actually cheaper. One set was these two, right? These two. And then in the server, the red one went in a second slot, and then that went over to the other system, because that way, that was cheaper for me. It was cheaper for me to have 4 of those network cards to adapt 3 devices than it was to buy 1 network switch, because you still needed most of those network cards. But once I exceeded 3 devices, like I'm almost doing like a ring bus network at this point, effectively. But once I'm, maybe not ring bus, but you know, like that much older style of networking. And also all of those, I don't believe I could communicate from one of the devices that was using the server to the other device that was using the server. It was just to access the server. But even hard drives do 250 megabytes a second in sequential, which you could take advantage of. Like if you guys only have hard drives in your server, 2.5 gig is enough. For most people, 2.5 gig is probably enough. If you're just doing storage purposes. And it's going to be way better than gigabit. Like, holy bejesus. Because there's other things that come with it, like protocols and stuff like that, where you're going to see a massive improvement. But realistically, there weren't 5 gig controllers came out with that, but that's like a 5 gig controller is, I would say, like the rarest of the bunch, because it's not significantly cheaper than the 10 gig ones at the time, and I have never seen a 5 gig switch. The only thing I have seen is 5 gig network controllers, and I don't know where my USB adapter is because they didn't require Thunderbolt. They could just use normal USB at the time. And I do have a adapter from the same brand that the 10 gig that I got now was from, that I used for my laptop and Chibi PC, actually, because Chibi PC only has gigabit, so you got to use the USB 3 adapter or USB 3 port to get it greater than, that would have been what was using one of the other systems that was using access to the server without the switch. Would have been GBPC, because I usually what would happen is I'd want a game on my desktop and I'd have edited the video and or timeline or whatever it is that I was doing, and then I would have that on the server, and then I would have GBPC do the actual workload. Like, yes, it's slower, it's a step down, but it's not preventing me from using my computer. So, but needless to say, years before I had that switch, I was already doing 10 gig. And that's years after 10 gig was already a thing. Let's see here. No, 2012 is way too early. Skylake and Haswell lead PCIe misconception. Order confirmation. There you go, X100C by 2. And I just wired them together. I was inspired by there you go, Cat 7 white shielded twisted pair. That one, I think, is the white cable that's under here. You can see it going right there. That thing still exists. I wouldn't say buy Cat 7. Hop out of Cat 6A. Get your cables. I don't think True Cable has Cat 6A yet. There's some mono price ones. If you need suggestions, reach out in the comments or our Discord. Yeah, True Cable only has Cat 6 so far. They're working on Cat 6A. Once they have Cat 6A, I will only be buying True Cable because they test them before they ship them, and that is a real thing that needs to be done from experience. It's just annoying. It's super annoying when the issue why you're having like either bad performance or inconsistencies or dropouts is because this brand new cable you bought is bad. So I'm willing to pay a bit more because they actually test each and every individual cable. Currently, patch cables, they only have Cat 6. So for now, you've seen, I think I've made videos on some of the mono price ones. They're thinner, they're higher quality. Remember, patch cables ideally cap out at 14 feet. Don't go over that. Maybe 25 if you have to. But realistically, over that 14 feet, you shouldn't be using a patch cable. you should be doing at least a permanent solution, or at least a temporary permanent solution, like using keystones and like a patch cable is designed to be your stranded, flexible cable for moving a device around and or plugging and unplugging. Whereas these longer lengths, how they're more reliable is by using much more like thicker, durable, less flexible, often solid core cable. So and I fixed a lot just by keeping the patch cables 14 feet or less. Making sure also you don't want to coil them up. If you do, you actually want to coil them and flip them into a figure 8, because the coiling can induce RFI. There's a whole bunch of, like, you don't want that with a network cable, especially if it's shielded. Don't want that. You're like, shouldn't shielding prevent that? If you do it right. Most people don't. So we got our USB cable. This is a whole big talk about. This isn't even the Ubiquiti switch, and the switch isn't what I ordered. What I ordered was the Pro Max. Yes, even Ubiquiti with their networking gear has adopted Apple's fucking naming. Ubiquiti's done it. Apple or Dell's done it. Of course, right? Apple does something, and everybody else has to fall. Come on. Come on. Of course, the phone breaks, and then it falls back in the box. There you go. Get on the phone. That's some durable foam. I'm going to coast the box and the foam break on the part that isn't the durable foam. Right? Keep the box going, make sure this guy works. Always do that. Now this is, and there's probably higher end stuff, because this one without a control board can't be network controlled. But it has two different control boards. One that adds, or three actually, I think. You got one that just adds LAN networking, which I think that one has to be cloud controlled, or at a minimum you have to run sort of app on your server. Boo, don't do that one. Now the much more expensive one is the one that has a console port, meaning this would have an IP address and you can manage it. Yay, do that one. And the other one is Wi-Fi. I don't know if that's meant just as a backup or what. What is this? It's a big friggin' UBS. There are bigger ones, obviously. This bad boy is the second biggest and biggest in the newer line from CyberPower. And no, they didn't sponsor this at all. Did not come with rails. Holy shit, is this smaller than the size up? I have installed the size up from this, and you actually have to make sure you get a UPS depth network rack. Like if you're not doing a server rack, you're just doing networking. UPS depth is not full server depth, but this is like network switch depth. Maybe that part right there is a bit longer than a network switch, right? But yeah, this could go in a normal network rack. You probably want it on the bottom, still do the weight. But this is a heck of a lot smaller than their biggest size one that is actually almost double. And that's what we're going to get into. This guy here should be the 2000 VA. Did it say on here? No. To get the right model. There you go. 2000 VA, 2000 on the name there, which is a 1200 watt. There's a 2200 VA. That's what I'm talking about. That the farm actually didn't order. They actually ordered, I think, this size or the size smaller. I got the bigger one. 1200 watt. But it does have a 20 amp plug on it. And all the plugs on the back, unlike the higher end one, because the higher one was a little bit older, it has all 20 amp plugs back there. 4 battery, 4 non-battery. I think those are still surge protected. There probably somewhere is something on here where I have to pull the front of it off and pull a tab for the battery so I can actually work. We'll have to see. Some of those are like that, some are not. I've installed plenty of UPS in my day. This thing is way smaller than I expected because, like I said, for the size up from this, which I may still have to get if there are not further updates, because currently it looks like they're running the old lineup that are like super burly. The plugs on them look much like that Triplight ISO bar. You know, it's like metal shrouded plugs, metal casing, and everything. This thing is much more plasticky. But here's your expansion port. See, expansion port. Now that's where you can put in your, instead of just your USB or your serial or our 232 plug, you can add a module and be able to either cloud monitor them, console. If you're buying this for an enterprise, don't cheap out and get cloud monitoring because you probably got to pay them, or when it goes down, you can't use it anymore. Yada, yada, yada. Get the console one at least, or there's like a Wi-Fi antenna one. The reason why I went here is because even though this is a 1200 watt 2000 VA, it's mostly going to be for networking gear and technically also my servers. Now my one server, the bigger boy, the Pylon, in the Define 7 XL, that has an 850 watt power supply. I believe this one has a 650. You're like, well, where is it? See, that's a good question. And at some point, we will need to determine it. It's not that 650 watt Antec Platinum down there. That Frozen Slate broke the fan on and had to replace it, and all I have was an Octua. So the 1200 watts in this case isn't my limit. So it's actually cheaper to get 2 of these, or about the same price as getting 2 of these. I shouldn't have said it. I think technically it's like $50 more expensive to get 2 1200 watt 2000 VAs as it would be to get one 1500 watt 2200 VA, right? And this is also the newer model, right? Newer design, like much newer, years newer, like maybe even like 5+ years newer, because the other one that is on there is about as old as this older designed desktop Sabre Power, like that guy. Whereas within the past 2-3 years, they've updated to this much more squared off guy with a much more digital looking display that has both USB-C and USB-A on the front for charging. So the other big boy rack mount guy that, like I said, you need a UPS depth rack. It's like huge by comparison. Much older design. Much more beefy, though, too, like build-wise. I don't necessarily need that. And also for the networking, I doubt any single item would exceed 1200 watt, which that's our limit here, right? So what I would rather personally have for the network and server area is we'll probably have one of these that has the server on and networking gear, and we'll have the other one, that guy, at least while it still lives here. It may end up, ideally going to another location because that's going to be the backup server, it would be on a separate one with all the network gear. Or what I would do once that thing gets out of here is one of these is for the server and one of them is for all the network gear. I also have more servers. Let's go in the back room here. So these do not have a purpose yet, or a porpoise. This guy is running PFSense right now. Overkill, I know. I think it's a Dell, is it 330, 340, something like that. Just went out of service at work. Got a 10 gig X550 in there, half height. Had to add some of the adapters that never shipped with. But then I got this big bad boy down here, which was at one point filled with hard drives. The issue is I didn't get any of the sleds. Those are all but one or two of them are just covers. So I got to track those down. Those can be quite expensive. But eventually these will actually go in the rack. For context, yeah, that's how long a server is. A UPS rack is usually there. So here's network. There's UPS. There's server. That makes some sense. Probably the easiest way for me to do this. So eventually this will become just a server to do servery things and not the router. But I needed something that could run PFSense in the meantime. Modified, I might have even made a video about it, but I modified, Dell had some proprietary, it was a spec of 1.8 inch SATA SSDs. It was like the in-between between SATA and mSATA that they only used as like the OS boot drives in their server. And they're stupid expensive. They use proprietary SATA and power cables that are stuck together, kind of like SAS. Actually, I think it might actually be a SAS cable. But on the board, it is just a SATA port, not a SAS port. So I actually cut up the cables and made my own, separated the ones so I could just use standard 2.5 inch SATA drives in there. And obviously they don't fit in the carrier. The reason why they were used is because two of those 1.8 inch drives next to each other could fit into the slot that would normally take a slot loading or a tray style laptop DVD ROM drive. So they could put it's all, Dell will never retool anything, right? So they would rather come up with like a proprietary SSD with some wacky adapter that then slots into where an optical drive used to be 5 years ago than just put some fucking 2.5 inch drives there. Turns out, on top of the hard drive bays in there, there's plenty of room to slip in a 2.5 inch drive, with some double stick tape or some Velcro or whatever. Made it work. That thing's working beautifully. I forget which drives I gave it, but just hucked them in there. Hucked in threw them in RAID 0 and hucked in that 10 gig card, and it's been humming. Literally, you heard it. I haven't even gone in and modified the fans. I really should. But that's what's gonna go. I got the Pro Max Ubiquity coming. You'll probably see a video coming soon on that. This guy, so I had a surge protector in here, and the reason why this all came up is like, well, why are you even dealing with that? PFSense seems to be working. Yeah, it was a temporary solution because Ubiquity didn't yet sell the Pro Max, which is the 5 gig one. They now also sell one up even higher that I don't need. That's an 8.5 gig. This guy, however, got zapped. We had some monstrous thunderstorms. I don't know if you can see like the little dark thing there, but in here you can see this ground is melted. Do you see how it's rounded out, right? There you go. You can see how that prong is like browned and melted. You can see how that one is melted on that one. So this one had the modem and the that server on it. And yes, it's nothing amazing. It was just what was over there because it's just like a singular outlet. But it saved it because I noticed that the protecting it's not an LED. It's like a incandescent. Actually, those aren't even incandescent. I forget. There's like a specific. It's like a tube that's in there that runs on AC voltage. But the light was out. And I'm like, wait a second. Did this get hit? Because what was happening on the PFCent box was it would turn on, run for a bit, but then under any sort of load, it would turn off. And then reboot itself. It'd cycle at most, it'd run 15 minutes. Basically, the power supply is very unhappy in there. Got rid of that surge protector, put in a big boy ISO bar, because that's what I happen to have some extras around here of, like an 8-port one. That little 2-port is great for controlling like your soldering irons, your desoldering pumps, because this trigger on this, you think that turns it on? No. What turns it on is you plug it in. I gotta clean that out, don't I? So that's why you need some other sort of desktop power switch, and I use that beefy. I mean, like, this thing's metal, like extruded aluminum. So I got one of those over there temporarily, and it's back up and running. But realistically, I should probably go on eBay and get, because that server also only has one power supply in it. I bought a pair of the bigger ones that should be able to go in it, and I thought they were incompatible because I think it's got like a 550 watt. I don't know. I might have went to the 550 watt. I don't remember. I looked up like when you get these Dell servers used, you either have to know what parts they used to have, or you have to, like, because you were using them previously or something like that, or you have to, like, maybe it's a common enough server that people online have threads about it on Reddit and other forums. Is Reddit really a forum? Yeah, I hate how it works. But stuff like that. Or you have to look up the service manual and the original, like, there's usually a 1 to 2 page thing that they ship that says, like, here's all the configurations you can get it in, right? And then you got to track down the parts for it. So I thought that possibly the power supplies I got for it were incompatible because they were bigger than what they shipped with, though that model could be configured to use them, right? No, one of the two I got was bad. Yeah. Then because I added in, there's like a board that you put in to be able to, it converts a vertical slot to a horizontal slot, so you can use that half height and a full height that's in there. However, when you add that, you have to add another fan in that was not in this original configuration, probably to save money. And that's to cool the slot, because server cards, unlike graphics cards that have these nice big coolers on them, server cards, I have one right here, have fans and generally have fairly small cooling because they expect those loud fans you heard blowing over them. So I had to add a fan that actually blows across the PCI Express slot effectively, because that was not spec'd to have PCI Express expansion. And I might have actually been able to do it cheaper, because you can get either a 4-port 1 gig, like it's like a Dell specific add-in Intel card, or I think it's like a 2-port or a 1-port 10 gig that goes in that slot. I didn't know how those worked. Like, as in, I've used servers that have them already in there. I didn't know how they worked in, like, what I could order that would slot in there without doing more research. And I already have X550s, like, around here. Here. You want another one? Here you go. There's another one. Oh, you want another one? There's another one. And yes, those are genuine ones. That's the genuine Intel thing. Do not buy them without... I would have to go over that, because they're counterfeit very often. Also, once again, if you guys want the QNAP ones, 1, 2, I have a third one over there. There might be one still in the system someplace. Let me know, because I'm selling those, because I'm switching to the Intel X550s. Not that the QNAPs are bad. X550s just seem to have better performance, better reliability if you want to put up with them. But yeah, I mean, you should be able to tell by how many cards I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. What? 8 cards, and how many ports are on that Switch? Actually, I think it might be 7 cards. Wait, 7 devices? All the 10 gig? Yeah, that was the whole point of the freaking Switch. And then the last port would go into a 1 gig Switch. Would hook into the rest of the network through that 1 gig Switch. So as long as those devices were communicating to each other, they'd be 10 gig. That was previously. Now that we have 5 gig coming in through pfSense, that 5 gig goes to that switch, and then it goes out to a 1 gig switch for all these slower devices. Ideally, down the line, I can just buy that one. I think it's like an XG24 Pro or something. It's a fairly high-end switch. They make a PoE one too, but that thing's almost double. Ugh, heart attack prices. But yeah, I very much actually do use and have wired up all my 10 gig, and it is worth it if you put the time in. Even 2.5 gig would be worth it. It probably is a little bit more plug and play for 2.5 gig. There's a lot of configuration to actually get the 10 gig, draw out the 10 gig out of the 10 gig is, basically I had to take notes on YouTube videos to get that working. It is a little bit easier now with Windows 11 because it's like baked in, whereas previously in Windows 10 it was only baked into Pro for Workstations. But even then, depending on which server OS you're running, it may have a trash garbage SMB implementation and run like poop. And then you have to figure out how to get NFS working on Windows, which you'll be told can't be done properly. They're wrong, by the way, because I'm running it. But it could be better because it's very outdated in Windows, at least. Not NFS isn't outdated. But here we have, this is CP2000PFCRM2U. So it's a 2U. I'll have to read the manual in here to see if I have to pull a thing for the battery. And this one, actually, it's Big Brother, which is what I thought I was going to have to buy one of those for downstairs. These are 400, roughly like 409, I think, on sale. I think list price is 430 or 479, something like that. But the bigger one, the 1500 watt, that's 2200 VA, that is 800 MSRP, 730, I think, or something around there. Actual retail. So I originally thought I'd have to buy 2 of the big boys, one upstairs for the desktop and that configuration, and one downstairs for the networking and stuff. This is a much better solution for the networking. Now, what I may do is I may try to run one of these for my desktop. 1300 watt power supply, 1200 watt unit, but half the price, right? So I could get 2 of these, as in I'd run my desktop, just my desktop, one of these, right? And the other one would run the 3 monitors you see here, possibly a TV. I want to get, like on LTT's recent Scrap Air Wars video. What did he find? Like $550 for a 75-inch TV with an included soundbar. I think they said, like, in US dollars, that's like $350 or something. Yeah, if Black Friday comes around and I can get a 75-inch TV for $350, I will be. Because what I want to do is I want to make my top monitor that I used to have above all this flat mounted on the wall, angled down, and just be a big friggin' boy. And that's where I throw up my YouTube videos. That's where I throw up. Or if people are playing games, you don't have to play on the computer monitor. That's a 65 for those wondering. I originally was just going to get a 55, but I really love how this turned out. It was worth spending that little bit more the other year to get that 65. And no, we're not talking OLED. It just has to be 4K and HDR capable. Ideally, HDMI, what is it, 2.1, so you can turn on all the gubbins and ideally put it in game mode. Not that it'll look much better, but that just game mode just makes it more compatible with PC stuff. If I can get an LG, even better. I've been really liking LG. You saw LG main display OLED, LG dual ups there. For some reason, this right panel has a lot of dust on it. You can see right there. And we got some smears on the OLED. And the left one has no dust. I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, if you guys see a great banger deal on a massive cheap TV around the holidays, let me know. I am looking for one. And then I'm going to have a little strip display underneath. I've had that for a while. You guys might have seen it a couple times right here. Those have gone up hugely in price. Apparently, I got a banger deal. One of the guys in the anime club only just got this is a 4K. I think he got either it's still at least 1080p. Might even be a step up from that, but like a 1440p style. And it was the same or more than what I paid for that guy. So that'll be kind of stripped down below. That's me running what's in here, which is both of those run off my Intel GPU that's in there. Because all three of those are running DisplayPort. And then we have my studio monitors, subwoofer, etc. So all that sort of stuff would go on a second one of these. You know, I can separate it. I hope I can do that. Now, here's an issue I've ran into. Technically speaking, the desktop variants of this can do 900 watts. For most of you, an 850 watt power supply would be fine, right? See, right there, that's 900 watts. So here's the issue, though. A lot of our systems, and for some time now, since basically Ryzen, maybe a little bit after Ryzen 3rd gen at least, I'd say, most people with when you run the 16 core variant, even the 8 core, you might leave yourself a little bit of headroom, but you're running a 1,000 watt power supply. When you're pulling 850 watts from that UPS, being it's a 900 watt UPS, it gets grumpy. So I have to wonder what happens when you try to pull, when I have a 1,300 watt power supply and I pull 1,200 of the 1,300 watts from here. And yes, I have made those 900 watt ones go over current because I have had a 1,000 watt power supply plugged into one and made it go over current. Now, if you're not drawing more than that, it's a non-issue. But that's where I'm thinking, at least upstairs, in the upstairs setup, I may have to get the big, giant, beefy guy. Because, not that I don't think, I mean, like right now in this thing, we're running 5950X, 4070 Ti, whack ton of drives and other stuff and fans and whatnot. And the B580 is going to be in there. But I don't think that gets anywhere near the power draw that the 3080 Ti would have been, especially when water blocked and overclocked, or like my 2080 Ti was when water blocked and overclocked, along with the HEDT Intel CPU that was in there. We were definitely exceeding. That's actually, back then I was running 1,000 watts because, once again, when kind of getting past that 850 watts of the 1,000, I was seeing weird stuff going. As soon as I split it up between 2,000 watt power supplies, no problem. If you added them together, they exceeded 1,000 watts. So we must have hit some in power supply over current protection. That is why now the desktop is running a 1,300 watt power supply instead of 1,000. Because we exceeded, it's kind of like we've seen this before where you're exceeding, like I don't necessarily need 64 gigs of RAM, right? Nowadays you can get 48 and 96, right? I actually need 32 is fine when I'm desktoping around, right? If I go as far as editing raw 4K footage on here, 64 gigs RAM is not enough. But I don't have with the density of DDR4, getting 128, especially with what that's made out of, that would have required 8 sticks, and I used to have that in my X99 rig. And I was hoping to go to Threadripper 5000, which basically never existed on the consumer side, to Paisley is wanting to jump on me because I've taken too long with this video, and probably you all would agree. But I exceed 64 gigs. But do I need 128 to edit raw 4K? No. I need like 80 something. So that's where 96 gigs might be perfect. But the same sort of thing with power supplies is, yeah, I might need more than 1,000, but I don't need 1,300. I especially don't need 1,500 or 1,600. So that's something to keep in mind. When you are getting the power supply for your desktop, you do want to overspec it a bit. But something to keep in mind, depending on what you're doing. Now, if you know you'll never draw more than 900 watts, these desktop ones from Cyberpower, you can get them in normal consumer one. They start at 900 and go like 900, 600. I don't know. There's ones below that. Or if you go to Best Buy, you can buy their gamer one designed for your, I don't know, console or something. It's just a it's a GX 1000, I think, or something. And that is their that's just the top spec of the pure sine wave Cyberpower, branded for gamers. It doesn't have the, because I know some of the brands are now doing, who makes the AVR series? APC, I think it is. Also Eaton, who owns APC, I believe. I might be wrong there. They bought one of the UPS brands, one of the more consumer UPS brands. They have like an RGB one with like a movable display. I can tell you, you do not need that. The Cyberpower ones have been very reliable for me. We've even swapped some batteries in them. They've also taken some big zaps for us. Do you see this? I'm being attacked. Paisley Marie. Yeah, they've been hit. We've had 2 of them taken out by thunder, lightning, etc. storms. They've taken it. The comparable ones at the 900 watt, what is it, like 1200 VA or something like that? They are $50 or $100 more. So personally, I mean, especially because I got the USB-C on the front now. But like, I even turn the displays off because if you do leave them on all the time, they will burn out. The one that is on the repair PC under there, you cannot read anymore. So that's why I've stuck with these for the longest time. Back in the day, they were the only ones that sold consumer or prosumer level, like the non-rack mount desktop ones, right, that were pure sine wave. And even then, they have this sort of prosumer, small business, let's call it, rack mount ones that are also pure sine wave that go up to kind of like the max power you'd need any single system to use, unless you're doing, like 1,1600 watts. I'm sorry, but like, if you go to the one above this, that's like the 1,500 watt one, like I said, doubles from this newer 1,200. There's just part of why that is it's a much older design, and that thing is like a third or 50% longer. Way, like, this has the same plugs as their sort of desktop one, maybe a little bit better because these are like individualized squares and they're 20 amps. The whole back of that other one looks like that thing, but UPS form. So make sure you guys, if you guys are spending $2,000+ just on the box that contains even $1,200, that the box that contains the computer, right? Spend $200 or $250, because the price is a little bit variable on these, on one of those desktop UPSs. You plug your whole setup in there. If you want it to last longer on battery, only stick your main monitor or whatever monitor you want to work when the power goes out on the battery backup. Then I normally set them to turn off with 5 minutes of battery left, or 5 minutes of runtime left, because sometimes it can, especially with servers, take them quite a while to shut down. And Paisley obviously wants my attention. And this video went longer than expected. Hopefully you got some information that you didn't already have. And because my office is the only one that has the 20 amp plug or under the stairs, and under the stairs is not cleared out, we're going to need one of these. And what this does is it adapts the 20 amp, the NEMA 20p plug to the 15p. Normal outlet plug to there. No, I will not be exceeding 15 amps. I am just going to charge this up. And then the first thing and only thing that's going to be running on this is going to be the Pro Max router. And I think that's 100 watts or somewhere around there. So running it off the 15 amps should not be a problem anytime soon. Once we get it back in the rack, though, yes, you do want to be... That is something to be aware of, by the way, though. Most of the rooms in your house are going to be done with a 15 amp breaker. Some of the rooms, like the kitchen and the bathroom, will be done with a 20 amp breaker due to the high draw devices that they have in them. Often they will have dedicated breakers. Before you buy something like this, that is the one benefit of those desktop ones, they still use the NEMA 15, the normal plug, this guy, right? You don't have to change anything. In my case, in the office, when I had my desktop, you're back in its Case Labs form, and that'll exist again, as well as 5 monitors, my monitor speakers, like my studio monitor speakers, my subwoofer, all going. Lights would flicker. Because remember, here is my personal desktop, and over here would imagine Chibi PC with a triple monitor setup, and yada yada yada. My work laptop's over there as well. All that is just on the 15 amp breaker of that room. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure we were exceeding that. So what we're doing now is I have a dedicated 20 amp breaker in the office, just with 2 plugs, because at most 2 UPSs. And also the reason why I can do 2 1200 watt units is the theoretical maximum of a 20 amp breaker is 2400 watts. Hopefully we don't even get there, but that's why 2 1200 watts on that 20 amp breaker should TM be fine, right? So that's why I'd rather go that route with my desktop. Also, it's about the same to buy 2 of those as the one big beefier guy. And same thing down here in under the stairs where I plan to put my server rack. I originally was going to build my own out of wood. People are telling me, well, if you get a half rack, you can probably get the half rack in there, and then if I do a wall-mounted network rack above it, or somehow mount a network rack to the top of the half rack, that might be the better way to go. So we're probably going to go that route. Probably going to need to make some fans that circulate air in and out from under those stairs, but it'll, stuff is stored in there. It can be moved elsewhere, but this will be a nice close, because the power is routed over. That's where the breaker is, right? That's where the internet comes in the house. That is where all of the phone system that was actually wired with Cat 6 that I'm adapting to Ethernet system, that's where that's routed. So that's why I want to get the server, the network hardware under there. And maybe depending on how far the rack goes, maybe we can stuff some stuff way back there, but you better never have to get it. Then why have it, right? But I had a breaker specifically put in for that as well. So that like in my office upstairs, it'll be my desktop with the 2 UPSs more than likely. One running the system, one running all the accessories. Then the rest of the room will run Chibi PC, which is a much lower power unit. And like my work laptop, any lighting in the room, if the printer's up there. It's a laser printer. It does pull a good amount of juice, though it's looking like the fuser is out, and I'm debating, do I fix it or not? So, yeah, that bad boy, the fuser's going out on it. Basically, it constantly thinks there's a jam. You open it up, close it back up, it's fine, but to do that every time is getting real old. A refurbished fuser is $80. So, gotta look up what a new color laser jet. I want to go to Brother just because HP is kind of a lately. The other place that we have 20 amp breakers is for these guys right here. And there's a GFCI right there, because this is the workbench. Yes, the workbench is going to be at some point open. It doesn't need to just have monitor pieces and shit like that. This is all work in progress. It's been a work in progress for 2 years. And we got some outlets up here. See the yellow, right? I don't know where that guy goes. Is that the one going upstairs? It better not be. That might be the one that's going upstairs. We'll have to do some testing. Hopefully the one that's on the ceiling up here is not the upstairs one. I don't think it is, because that line goes there. This line goes here. Yeah, and then down to that conduit, right? So we have a 20 amp because this is a workbench and we're going to be using power tools, guys. This is why you do not buy 16 gauge. You do not buy 16 gauge. You do not buy 16 gauge extensions. You buy 14 gauge at a minimum. If you plan on running one device, like one power tool off of it, at a minimum, 14 gauge. If you're going like 50 foot, you buy 12 gauge. Or if you're going to run multiple power tools off of it. In this case, the reason why I wanted 20 amp is if you're running electrical power tools, they can each pull the better part of the 15 amp, right? So that's why I wanted 20 amp. And you want the GFCI because there's a sink here, as well as you might be working with paint or oil or, you know, things that you could put water on and electrocute yourself and that sort of stuff. But then we've got the ceiling ones here. Now, temporarily, this network stack is run off of one of them. But the nice thing is imagine this being cleaned out and empty, right? I want to eventually make like a fold down or a roll around table for here. And but then if you need to plug in, or like I've done it with the heat gun before as we were building, we built Peyton's computer in here. When we need the heat gun, any of the wired power tools, you just plug an extension cord in up there or plug the tool directly into the ceiling and you can use it. You don't have to like run one from way over there, or it's just super convenient to have them up in the ceiling and just kind of like drop down where you need them. I might even eventually do like you see in the garage where you can pull it down, like, right? Something like that. But that's 20 amp. And then that's 20 amp for that breaker. The other way that you can tell is if you look here, yellow, right? White. Right? Yellow, white. Okay. Look, bunch of white up there, bunch of white there, bunch of white. If we go to the light, it should be white. Yep, see white. So that's 15 amp. That's also going to be a lower gauge. I don't know if I can see that from here. I forget which gauge it is. 10-2? 12. 12-2. Okay. So the yellow's 12-2 and the white's probably 14-2. So there you go. That's what I'm saying. Once again, 14-2, right? That is for something that's going to use 15 amp, which any of your corded power tools could use 15 amp, right? 12-2 is for your 20 amp, or if you were going to do multiple 15 amp devices, or 10 amp, or high draw devices like using a little on the end. So then over here, the other place that I got some power installed was right here for the TV. This is just a 15 amp breaker for these two. That just runs the PC, and the TV and the speakers. I think they thought that wouldn't need to be a 20 amp. Yeah, you can see it's white. That's 15. I think we did the math. This PC has a 850 watt power supply. This needs cleaned up a little bit, definitely. 850 watt power supply. I don't know what wattage TVs are off the top of my head. But I have yet to exceed that, which is a 900 watt, whatever VA with all of this. Now I'm missing some of the surround and the Atmos speakers. But in general, basically that's why we only got the one plug. The other plugs that are up here are more for charging the controllers or other things that you wouldn't want plugged in. Depending on how many go down here, you might have to add a second one just for like a standard surge protector, rather than trying to get it all go through the UPS. But also, if you guys do want, and I've seen this before, people want more plugs. The older version of that gamer UPS used to have 5 plugs. I think the new one has 6. If that is still not enough, do not buy a surge protector and plug it in. It's already a surge protector. You could use the non-battery side of it, but I mean, you bought the UPS to have a battery, right? We might have some over here. Let me go find out for you. Surge protector. Good if you don't have a UPS. As close as you'll get. You can use, I was going to say guys like this. They get in the way fast. Like just a triple splitter. They make ones like this. These are the Best Buy ones. 1 to 3. Also, brands that do stuff for UPSs will make like a 1 to 2 or up to a 1 to 4. I might have even seen a 1 to 5. Buy good brands on it though. You know what I mean? I think they would have been like APC cords or Sabre power cords, or I'm forgetting the other brand. We have a power strip in the Triplight. I think they're Triplight cords actually. They split 1 to. I often would do the 1 to 2s. In reality, because you just be like, whoa, I'm one port short, and you don't want to put a whole strip in just for that. And you can do it. So as long as you're not overloading the wattage of that UPS, that's how I'm going to be doing it for networking. Is there's going to be way more than 4 devices probably plugged into there. Like I'm going to have, even over here, we've got the PoE for this guy. Yep, expertly mounted by all this metal stuff. Then you're like, whoa, what's the second PoE for? Well, there's another one on the other side of the basement, even more expertly mounted. Then we have the 2 network switches. We've got the box for the Hue. And in this case, this server guy is plugged in and Chibi PC is plugged in. Now, Chibi PC, I believe, is only into the surge protected side, because that thing's only 900 watts. Couldn't handle this, all the networking gear, and a Chibi PC on top of that, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean. But yeah, you can split it, like if you need to. Like if you have all this network stuff, by comparison, is very low draw, but you have no idea if you haven't worked in like small business or like enterprise. It kind of just happens because it's in a rack. The rack has UPS, but in small business, even if you buy a cheaper UPS, though realistically they don't have good ones that are below sort of this 200 to 250 with the 900 watts. In my opinion, you're better off. I mean, if you have a network rack, Sabre Power makes some smaller than the one that I just bought, or potentially. But if you don't have a rack and you just have like a custom or a provider modem, and then you have their router, hopefully it's like a little Ubiquiti or a little, not TP-Link anymore because they're banned. But what's some of the other brands? I'm trying to remember. You got TrendNet. You got forget. There's one that Level 1 Tech's Wendell had tried out. But there's other brands. You know, you can get their little ones, the little Ubiquity guys. They're like 8 ports max. You know, that would go in there, and you plug all that into, you know, like that Sabre power UPS, and then when power goes out or you get a surge, you got no problem. They might also have a NAS that needs to be plugged in. Most of those places do not want to spring enough money to get a rack-mounted NAS. So once again, you're probably going to be with a desktop UPS. Get the desktop UPS, plug it into the NAS for management. You will save yourself so many headaches because that shit won't go down and you won't need to power it back up or check on it, or they think it's dead and it's actually just powered off. You know, UPS everything. Ideally, like, the only thing that really doesn't need is like a laptop because it has a battery, right? I think I don't know if it's Seasonic. Might have been one of the other brands is actually coming up with a power supply that actually has a little UPS inside of it because they're using lithium polymer, lithium ion, or maybe was that lithium salt in there, so you know, just you don't want it to explode. But you get like just enough, you get enough coverage, not even for that 5 minutes that I was talking about, but just to get you through. Around here we get a lot of these brownouts or that's for like the power dips, or at most we'll get like the last one that killed the router was 1.5 minutes that it was out. It'll cover that probably, but not much more. Or maybe you won't even do the 1.5 minutes and do a half a minute or something. That'd still be very, very useful. But you know, you're spending $2,000 plus on your PC or whatever. Spend 10% of that and like get some insurance. Also, often here's the other thing is it cleans up your power. It's been shown on, we talked about scrapyard doors earlier. On one of the scrapyard doors, one of them couldn't do an overclock. They plugged it into a battery backup UPS. That conditioned the power. They could. Bada bing, bada boom. You know, you don't want unclean, wavy ass power. You know, and we often get that here. We very rarely are we completely out of power. It's just, you know, a little janky sometimes and a little inconsistent. So that's why I know a lot of friends that are not from our area. They're like, "Well, how would you need it? Our power never goes out." I'm like, "Well, do you know how much your power actually grays out or browns out, or you know, bips when you're not at home, like just short, like it doesn't even go long enough to knock the clock to reset, sort of thing." All that, if you left your PC on, you do not want that hitting the PC. It is very grumpy about. It's actually more grumpy about power completely going out of nowhere and then it coming back than it is just power completely going out. But then this prevents you having to, like, if you can't set, like on the server, it's set when power comes back, turn back on, right? But maybe you can't set that on this device. Well, at least on a lot of the networking devices, that's not a thing you can set. So what you do then is you just have battery backup, so hopefully that lasts long enough that you won't have to worry about that. I've even used them in situations where there's been companies in malls, which a mall, what's fucking mall anymore, right? But what happens is the mall turns out power at the end of the night. So all their stuff would completely turn off. And electronics, they don't mind being off and in standby, but they do mind being completely off. So we ended up using UPSs to carry the standby state into the morning, so that when the power was off, they wouldn't have to like reset everything back up or go through the super long proper boot procedure because it's not in standby or in low power mode, like it lost power. Like you're avoiding that just by having enough battery time to get you through to the next day, because it was really annoying for them to have to reset up a bunch of stuff. So questions, comments, throw them down below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I was going to get this plugged in, but now I'm going to sleep. Peace.